Hi, thank you for meeting with us today. We felt it was important to include a candidate from the Hastings, Lennox, and Addington riding because our member base extends up to Bancroft and as far east as Napanee. We had members submit questions to us with their concerns for arts and culture in the upcoming election, so we are glad you are here to answer their questions. So I'm Cody, I'm the Media and Communications Director for the Quinte Arts Council.
Hi, I'm Heather Christensen. I'm the program director here at the Quinte Arts Council.
Okay.
And
Nice to meet you both.
Could you introduce yourself to our audience?
I'm Eric Depoe. Through most of my life, I've represented folks who needed, assistance. Help. My latest thing is I'm a licensed paralegal, and I represent injured workers at the workers' compensation in the workers' compensation system. So if they run afoul of the WSIB, I try to get benefits for them. So that's my current gig. I'm sitting in my office right now, which I'm surrounded with case files. I had a restaurant in Yorker for many years, which is a completely different deal, and I was the chef there, and so for 17 years I ran a restaurant in Yorker. So I have an extremely varied background. So I understand small business. I understand creativity. Like running a restaurant is a immensely creative thing. Running a small business in general is creative. You need to be thinking all the time about what you're going to do. In the restaurant, you're cooking all the time, so you're thinking of menu items, you're thinking of dishes and how to prepare them, but also how to prepare them without breaking the bank, so you can keep your restaurant viable. A way to never get rich is to run a food business in a small town. So it was a struggle. In some years we made money, in some years we didn't, but it was a wonderful experience.
Ontario is a big province, but the locations people think of as cultural hubs tend to be very centralized, like the big cities.
Right.
How do you advocate to help attract artists to your riding instead of the big cities?
So the arts are a very big part, or should be a very big part, and can be a very big part of the economy of rural areas. So governments ought to pay more attention to them. So they stimulate tourism, they stimulate culture, they stimulate thought, people getting things done. There are a lot of artists in this riding. It's terrific to see folks in. I was just in Bancroft. In fact, I've been in Bancroft twice in the last 2 weeks, and I've been going. I went into a few galleries in Bancroft, which I was happy to see. And in one of them, I bought my wife a Mother's Day present. So it's, we buy art, we love art, we buy original art when we can. I mean, we are not wealthy people, but we like to support the arts. We have supported the arts both personally and in the community. For example, do you know Fourth Line Theater? Mm-hmm. It's a wonderful initiative, and we go there as often as we can. We get there 2 or 3 times a year. My wife has been on several theater boards. When we lived in Toronto many years ago, she was on the Young People's Theater board. When we came to Yorker, we moved to Yorker to run the restaurant. She joined the board of Theatre Kingston and also the board of the Thousand Islands Playhouse. The economic difference between Gananoque, which has a thriving arts community and is the theater is an important regional theater. It's very well run, and it has lots of folks that attend, and it's a real driver for the arts and a driver of the economy in Gananoque. And I contrast that with Deseronto, where there is a theater, but it is not used as a theater. It's kind of derelict now. So it's unfortunate that, with some investment, Deseronto could become a thriving arts community as well.
The Hastings, Lennox, and Addington riding encompasses many different and diverse areas and peoples. How do you plan to prioritize Indigenous arts and culture projects?
Okay, Indigenous arts and culture projects. There's
Okay, so yes, there is a vibrant arts community on the Tyendinaga Mohawk territory, and I've seen it in a number of ways. I've been to galleries there, and I've also been to the powwow where there are a lot of kiosks that sell art. I thought it was appalling when the Ford government canceled the Indigenous Culture Fund, which was created to support First Nations artists. So it was created to support the arts in First Nations communities, and so they cut. It was a $2.5 million fund that was cut, and it was cut specifically from Indigenous artists, which is wrong. We would restore this fund. The NDP would restore this fund. This fund was a response to the calls for the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Very important to do this. I mean, I think only 5 or 6 of these calls have actually been dealt with, and there are many of them, 95, I think, and we haven't addressed them mostly. So we have a great commission that makes a whole bunch of recommendations, and then nothing happens. Or like 10% of the recommendations are actually put into practice. That's shameful. So we certainly would restore and invest additional funding to the Ontario Arts Council, where the fund would flow through. So to the Indigenous Culture Fund and the Ontario Music Fund. So all of these things flow through the Ontario Arts Council. I wanted to talk to you about the community arts project that we sponsored when we had on our restaurant in Napanee. This was a great project. The wall of our restaurant that faces the river, a big, very public space. As you drive through Yorker, you can't miss it. So we thought this is a great subject for a community arts project. So we put an advertisement in the window of the restaurant. We want to, people from the village who are interested in a community arts project, we're going to have a meeting. We had discussions what elements should be there in the sculpture. We designed the sculpture, and then she came up with 3 proposed designs, and we put the drawings of the 3 designs in the window of the restaurant and had a vote. And so the people of the village and our customers got to vote on which design they liked the best. And there was no conflict of interest here, because the design we liked was the one that most people liked by quite a margin. So we that's the design we put up. And then that group of people were not finished. They thought there's more we could do. Carolyn Butts was the artist, and her husband Hans. They did the sculpture. We raised about $10,000 in the community to help pay for it. It turned out to be a fabulous project. This piece of art really lifted the spirits of the whole community, and it's a landmark now. People know when they drive through Yorker, everybody sees it, everybody notices it.
So should arts and culture be a funding priority for the government? And what about TVO?
Yes, arts and culture funding should be a priority for the government. I mean, I keep talking about the economic benefits of arts and culture, but I mean, the other benefits, the non-monetary benefits of it, are really important too. We don't pay any attention to this kind of benefit. Having art in the community or in people's lives, I think, is really important, and it does lift the spirit. It generates people to think about stuff. The sculpture that we did, I mean, it has elements in it and that are of historical importance in York. And so we've got one of the elements of the sculpture is a wagon wheel. The restaurant that I had was built as a furniture store, and they made their own and sold their own furniture. So the chair in the sculpture is the design of the chair. So so the sculpture has a lot of resonance for folks in York. The pride of place, that can develop as a result of these things. These are all non-monetary items, but they're huge, and they're great reasons to have arts in your community. So yes, it's really important, and it should be funded properly. The Ford government is not interested in arts at all, which is I think depressing. We want to support the arts. We would do like a COVID arts and culture recovery strategy, including operating and marketing stabilization funds, emergency grants, and also do direct support to artists for live entertainment and cultural workers to help keep them afloat. We would, try to ensure the survival of local programs, ethnic and multilingual community museums, etc., francophone seniors and equity-seeking arts programs. We would encourage those and help fund them.
I think you're actually answering our next question before we got to ask it. So that question was, how would you prioritize investment in arts and cultures as an economic driver?
It's really important to use, the arts as an economic driver. It stimulates tourism. You get ancillary benefits like B&Bs in the community, or hotels and motels are also stimulated. Once you've got cultural institutions going, like galleries, etc., that stimulates the growth of other arts communities. An example, I was in Maynooth the other day, and there's a gallery there, and in the summertime, Maynooth explodes with tourists, and it's a real hub for the arts. It's terrific. So, and I mean, Maynooth is a tiny place. There's probably a couple hundred people that live there, but there are 6 or 7 galleries on the main street, and it's a wonderful place to visit. You could spend a whole day there, going into the galleries and looking at. There are restaurants that are, because there are crowds of people, the restaurants thrive too. So there's a good stimulus to the arts. I'm saying that we should have an arts and culture recovery strategy, which would include direct support to artists to keep them afloat. Artists of all kinds, performers, musicians, as well as the traditional plastic arts.
And how do you plan on advocating for increased investments in arts and culture?
We have policies that I think are that show that we support investment in the arts, and that we would reverse many of the cuts to the arts made by previous Liberals and Conservatives governments. Art is one of the courses that gets cut in high schools when they're talking about what to cut. Music gets cut, art gets cut, and these are things that feed the spirit. So you really need to stimulate that. So having a larger presence of an art scene in a community, I mean, it helps the mental health of the community, I think, to have a vibrant art scene in that community. So I think it's really important for so many reasons.
You rated your position on arts and culture investments as 10 out of 10. How will you prove that to the people in the arts and culture sector?
One of the things that I would like to do is set up as MPP is set up a regular roundtable of arts workers. So painters, actors, musicians, all of the folks who are working in art. I'd like to, so I can be a strong advocate. I can hear from them directly. It's really important that government communicate, or that a government representative communicates directly with these folks. So I would like to set up a roundtable so I can hear. I have a mechanism to hear from them, and I certainly would want your organization to participate in that. So yeah, so it's really, I would really like to do that, of hearing what needs are, both financially and otherwise, what supports government could provide to make the arts flourish, and make us into a society that values and loves the arts, which is, I don't think we see much of that from government, certainly not in the last 4 years.
So on the advocacy survey you completed for us, you said you believed a basic universal income would benefit people in the arts and culture sectors. How committed are you to pursuing a basic universal income for the people of Ontario?
There was a pilot project that was canceled by the Ford government after they promised not to cancel it. They did cancel it as soon as they got into office, and that through the lives of the 4,000 participants into chaos, right? I mean, they were living off the basic income project, and then that was canceled. So we would reinstitute that. And then, of course, it's a pilot project because you want findings and you want to figure out what's the best way to implement a basic income, and then presumably implement it. So we would restart the basic income project and act on its results, like act on the conclusions. It's hard to implement it if you haven't figured out how to do that. And to do that, you need a pilot project so you can make your mistakes, you can figure out how to correct those, and then get on with the project for the whole economy, throughout the whole economy. So I think it's important that we do that. So we would restart that project.
Amazing. Those were the questions that we had for you today. Thank you so much for meeting with us. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'm an enthusiastic arts supporter, and I think the answers to my questions, or the answers to your questions, would demonstrate that, and that arts is something that, the arts in general, is something that provides so much richness in people's lives, and the artists are so valuable for our society. I mean, artists are best thinkers, you know, and on a whole range of topics, and so art that they make often comments on social issues. I mean, playwrights are wonderful at that, and it should make us all think. That's really important. Like having our minds wake up to all the things we need to do is wonderful, and the arts does that.